beauty, all dressed beautifully to sing for us. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all please rise for the Negaraku.
United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam on stage to deliver her welcoming address for this year's NWGF. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause.
Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, Dr. Astro, UNFPA representative for Malaysia and Country Director for Thailand, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a privilege for me to be with you today. And on behalf of the United Nations in Malaysia, I welcome you to this third edition of the Malaysia Women and Girls Forum, expanding women's rights through economic equity. We are especially honored that Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, was able to join us today. I congratulate my colleagues at UNFPA Malaysia, the gender results groups and the partners for this unique platform for dialogue, advocacy and solutions, and for bringing together a stellar lineup of speakers, panelists, moderators, and an audience full of energy and great ideas, committed to the cause of advancing and empowering women and girls in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, the past 3 years have brought a series of mutually reinforcing crises. In addition to a devastating pandemic, the world has to withstand a perfect storm fueled by war, food and energy shortages, cost of living crises, and increasingly severe impacts of climate change. Recovery from these multiple traumas calls for urgency, ambition, and scale. Ensuring that no one is left behind and delivering sustainable development for everyone, everywhere, must be our priority, and women and girls must be high up on the list. There is no doubt that women and girls are among those that have suffered first and the most. I drafted this sentence and stopped to ask why. Why should women and girls systematically be among those that are hit the hardest? Despite decades-long efforts to empower half of humanity, we're not there yet. On a daily basis, and more so in times of crisis, any crisis, we worry first about girls dropping out of school, about child marriage, about various forms of violence against women and girls, about lost livelihoods or limited access to sexual and reproductive health, and about many other things. But in a country like Malaysia, with such a promising economic prospect and well-educated female human capital, we should not worry. And yet we do. And numbers and trends do tell us that we should still be concerned, because barriers to women's effective participation and empowerment stand stubbornly still. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's forum is about economic equity, a true enabler of empowerment and prosperity. Economic inequities contribute to further digging the inequality gap. Economic underrepresentation creates a vicious cycle of vulnerability perpetuated by social stigma, poverty, unequal access to healthcare, to justice, and weak political representation and participation. Malaysia's female labor force participation rate stood at 55.6% as of July 2022. Meanwhile, male labor force participation was a much healthier 82.5%. In July also, the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Index, which assesses countries on how well they distribute resources and opportunities among their male and female populations, ranked Malaysia 103rd out of 146 countries. Only 2 other ASEAN member states ranked below Malaysia. These startling facts trigger the same question: why? Why Malaysia? With some of the highest rates of female enrollment in primary, secondary, and tertiary education globally, Malaysia has the means to perform better by deconstructing legislative and social obstacles that women and girls face every day, and which suffocate their potential for economic progress. Addressing economic inequities goes beyond labor market policies that promote women's participation. It starts at the structural level by addressing a myriad of interlocked issues, ranging from legal protection to unpaid care work, to GBV, to access to finance, to social protection, to sexual and reproductive health, to harmful practices. So every move to address any of these challenges is a move towards economic equity. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many reasons to be optimistic in Malaysia. Several recently promulgated laws, such as the Anti-Sexual Harassment and Anti-Stalking Bills, the Housewives Social Security Act, as well as amendments to the Employment Act, all contribute to protecting women and women's fundamental rights and advancing the equality agenda. The new unity government is a historic opportunity for Malaysia to chart a pathway that matches the capabilities and enables it to devise effective strategies and solutions in line with the SDGs and international conventions. Women must have an undisputed center stage position, both as targets and contributors. It is essential that investing in removing barriers obstructing women's empowerment and economic participation would result in an additional 5 million contributors to the local economy. This income alone, as outlined by the 2019 World Bank report, Breaking Barriers, could be as much as 10,000 ringgits per capita, elevating Malaysia to a high-income nation. Such a transformational approach is both necessary and possible. Malaysia can be bolder and has the means to get women and girls out of the vulnerability trap. The UN country team stands by the government, civil society, the private sector, and all engaged stakeholders as the country builds and strengthens the foundations of a prosperous future which equally benefits men and women, boys and girls. Maintaining this forum as an annual meeting point of key players is one among many initiatives to ensure that these strong voices, success stories, and accumulation of recommendations across the themes can inspire policies, decisions, and action. I thank you. I congratulate UNFPA for another successful in-person edition. I thank you, Honorable Minister, for being with us today, and I wish you a fruitful discussion and a very successful forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karima Al-Qari. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite Dr. Åsa Torkelsen, United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA Malaysia representative, to deliver her opening remarks for this year's MWGF. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Dr. Åsa.
Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Women, Family and Community Development. Yang Berbahagia Dr. Naziace Yusuf, Secretary General of the Ministry of Women and Community Development. Ms. Karima El Khoury, United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam. To all of our esteemed speakers, panelists, moderators, guests, and members of the media here present and virtually connected, a very good morning to everyone, and Selamat Datang to the 3rd Malaysia Women and Girls Forum. It is a joy to witness this annual meeting becoming an institution in Malaysia, growing year by year. I thank the visionaries and change makers for realizing this, and everyone in the room today and in your homes connected. Today, we are deeply honored to have with us the Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, as our guest of honor to launch MWGF 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, for many countries in which I have served, they were struggling with their development. Before I reached Malaysia, I knew that Malaysia and other upper middle-income countries was looked to as a model or a dream that many aspire towards. And other countries may aspire and dream of the beautiful, paradise-like Malaysia that we are in today. And today we are gathered as change agents to discern and activate solutions for the advancement of women and girls in Malaysia, to charter equitable options and thriving conditions for everyone's potential to be realized. Ladies and gentlemen, today's theme is expanding women's rights through economic equity, and this is timely and necessary perspective for several reasons, and our resident coordinator outlined these very elegantly before me. We have seen that the challenges from the COVID stressors worldwide were more pronounced for women and girls, with our health and economic well-being suffering, additional care duties, and increased rates of gender-based violence, including child marriage, referred to as the shadow pandemic, or the crisis within the crisis. A study undertaken by UNFPA together with UNICEF in Malaysia showed that urban poverty had also deepened, and the impacts for women were relatively more severe following the COVID pandemic. Also, as Karima El Khoury, our resident coordinator in Malaysia, mentioned, and she reminded us, that in Malaysia there is a gap of about 27% between women's and men's labor force participation, that of women being one of the lowest in the region. And in addition to disparities in accessing the paid labor market, women are also mostly providing unpaid care work, which includes caring for the elderly, childcare, and other housework. And also, in addition, on the theme of economic equity, disparities can also be observed in access to finance, the gender pay gap, social security, parental leave, just to mention a few areas. However, taken together, the economic inequities cascade impacts that touch every part and stage of women's lives. Ladies and gentlemen, For an upper middle income country such as Malaysia, eyeing the high income path, providing opportunities for women's labor force participation and expanding the care economy represent an extraordinary untapped potential for growth, which could also expedite progress towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs in short. While this may actually seem a very complex challenge, knowing that we have struggled for long in this direction, from the point of UNFPA, which is the United Nations Reproductive Health Agency that I represent here in Malaysia, there are actually quick wins, as by expanding women's reproductive choices, our productive choices can be enlarged too. Indeed, UNFPA's abundant research shows that investing in the health, well-being, and potential of women and girls is an investment into the health, well-being, and prosperity of a country, its present and its future. Being able to choose the number, timing, and spacing of children can bolster economic and social development. And later today, we will launch in soft manner a study undertaken by the Economic Planning Unit in Malaysia in collaboration with UNFPA and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. It estimates the return on sexual and reproductive health investments, showing that they pay off abundantly. Without here and now anticipating the findings in detail, it offers and costs different policy options, all with positive results, and shows convincingly the policy-related investments that create win-win situations. And furthermore, the multiplier effect from making these investments, coupled with inclusion, will expedite prosperous and peaceful Malaysia and can disrupt the poverty cycles confronting many already economically vulnerable, particularly women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, in finalizing the report, I had the tremendous joy to travel across Malaysia, and I was able to meet with amazing women and men, girls and boys, who, in addition to their other duties, served wholeheartedly in communities in various ways. You will see some photos outside in the gallery, and you will also see them portrayed in the book that we will, or the report that we will soon launch. And beyond the findings of the report, women actually face multiple constraints throughout our life course that can be actually easily addressed. For example, easy measures such as providing proper menstrual hygiene products may keep young girls in school or workplace. An expanded care economy, flexible policies, and harassment-free workplaces can provide entry and keep women in the workforce. Early comprehensive sexuality education can save and enhance lives and also address teen pregnancies. And today, we are going to be hearing throughout the day of other inspiring opportunities for Malaysia. And by providing reproductive choices, we can expand women's productive options. And the two are intimately linked together in the nexus of our lived experience. They are the variables of our life equation. Hence, the ability to engage actively in, for example, family planning or life strategizing contributes to the positive growth and well-being spiral benefiting all. And in addition, there is tremendous opportunity for strategic investments into national infrastructure by converting the unpaid care work into a nascent care economy, offering individual opportunity, well-being, and prosperity. And I'm sure the investors are going to be excited about these opportunities. And in addition, investments in sexual and reproductive health build meaningful lives and treasures fully Malaysia's most precious resource, its people, strengthening human capital to radiate present and future wealth forever. Ladies and gentlemen, this point in time requires a determined restoration and activation of connectedness and engagement, tilting challenges into possibilities, networking, and resetting the collaborative trend in the world. We have this chance today and going forward. And this is what UNFPA desires to do, and what we can do today, to nurture a radically collaborative culture, and we look forward to intensify our partnership with all of you. Next year, UNFPA Malaysia will be commemorating 50 years of working hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, with the government and the people of Malaysia. And we will continue to invest in developing rights-based and evidence-based roadmaps, solutions, and advocacy, ensuring that all are included on this amazing development journey. And no one is left behind, regardless of age, gender, creed, or ethnic background. Economic equity is one important foundation that provides everyone with the opportunities for growth, exploration, achievement, and sense of security, a stepping stone for strategizing for our life and living our hope and aspirations. It provides us with the power of agency to be the best version of ourselves and to further uplift the country we call home into its full boundless potential, especially the aspirations of women and girls who make up about half of Malaysia's population. With this, I would once again like to thank each and every one of you for joining us here today, both here and those connecting from your home or office. I wish us all a fruitful and impactful MWGF 2022. I thank you for your attention. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osa. Listening that to your speech already gives us so much hope. Onward to our guests of honor now, ladies and gentlemen. It is now my honor to invite Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, our very own Minister of Women, Family and Community Development Malaysia, to deliver the keynote address for MWGF 2022. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, MC, for the day. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Your Excellency, Karima El Khoury, the United Nations representative to Malaysia, Brunei, Darussalam, and Singapore, Dr. Osa Tokrelson, UNFPA Malaysia representative, Yang Bahagia Datuk Dr. Maziah binti Cik Yusof, Secretary General of the Ministry of Women, Community and Family Development, esteemed speakers, academics, and members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure for me and an honor to be here with you all at the 3rd Annual Malaysia Women and Girls Forum. I'd like to extend my thanks to the United Nations Malaysia, United Nations Population Fund, as well as the Secretariat of the Malaysia Women and Girls Forum 2022 for developing and organizing this solution-centric platform. Congratulations to all of you. Malaysia's women and girls are the hearts and soul of our beloved nation. Ensuring the well-being and economic equity of half of our population is essential not only for Malaysia's development, but also to ensure full pandemic economic recovery. This would be possible through a whole-of-society approach in encouraging women and girls' full participation. These past 3 years have been truly challenging in our nation's history. The economic challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic have spilled over and caused loss or reduction in the people's income. Ladies and gentlemen, this, combined with escalating cost of living, has further impacted our communities, but none more so than our women and girls, especially those from the already vulnerable backgrounds, such as the B40 single female-headed households, rural women, and those in remote communities around Sabah and Sarawak. This is why it is very timely that the MWGF 2022 theme is expanding women's rights through economic equity, a very good one, very timely as we said. We have witnessed the sacrifices and incredible fortitude of Malaysian women and girls throughout the pandemic and the ongoing economic recovery period. Now it is time to focus on strategically rebuilding our social fabric and expanding our economic might for the benefit of all Malaysian families. There is no better way to do this than empowering every individual's economic agency by providing access to resources, financial or otherwise, as this will allow women in particular to take charge of their lives. Women participation in the economy has been shown to stimulate wider benefits. Studies of economies as varied as Bangladesh, Brazil, Canada, Ethiopia, and the United Kingdom suggest that women generally devote more of the household budget to education, health, and nutrition than men. We create bigger ripples when given monetary power. Not that we are trying to sideline men, sorry men, we are here to be practical in whatever that we're going to say here. So I hope you all also will understand why all these statements are made. Malaysia's women have indeed made immense strides in women's empowerment, women's education levels, lowering maternal mortality rates and gender equality over the past 65 years. In fact, in the late 1950s, when Malaya first gained independence, women made up just 10.7% of the total undergraduate population at University Malaya or the UM. Today, women currently entail an impressive 62% of University Malaya's undergraduate population, far outranking the men. Despite more female students in the universities and women also being more likely to graduate as compared to men, they are still vastly underrepresented in the labor force. According to the Graduate Statistics 2021 from the Department of Statistics Malaysia, or DOSM, female graduates make up more than half of the unemployment rate, which is 54.2%, as compared to male graduates, which is 45.8%. The majority of unemployed female graduates cited unpaid care work, which includes housework or family responsibilities, as keeping them outside of the labor force. This then leads to Malaysia having one of the lowest female labor force participation rates, or LFPR, in the region. Our overall female LFPR currently stands at 55.6% as of July 2022. Meanwhile, male LFPR registered at a healthy 82%. Bridging this gap between men and women in the workforce will definitely galvanize the slipping economic might of Malaysia's female labor force. We must also not forget to address job losses of Malaysia's women during the pandemic in hard-hit industries which have yet to recover, such as the tourism, services, and retail sectors. This has also further impacted household incomes and points to a critical need for investment in industries worst impacted by pandemic-related factors. Additionally, with more women working in sunset industries, there are great opportunities to upskill or reskill their existing female labor force, making them more resilient towards future shocks. Increased female LFPR not only helps boost household income, but also guarantees sufficient labor in competitive sectors in emerging economies like Malaysia's. There is also further opportunity for identifying industries with potential for increasing female LFPR. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia's economic recovery clearly can and should be shaped around increasing women's LFPR. I quote the World Bank 2019 Malaysia Country Report, Breaking Barriers. I quote here, if all economic barriers are removed for women in Malaysia, the country's income per capita could grow by 26.2%, implying an average annual income gain of 9,400 ringgit, unquote. So, ladies and gentlemen, increasing women's economic participation can treble Malaysia's economic recovery efforts, which will afford us much needed economic resilience in the challenging post-pandemic years to come. We must then strategically address the main impediments to women's labor force participation. There is still room for improvement in terms of family support policies, such as a comprehensive sexuality education and reproductive health services, for example, family planning services and accessibility to feminine care, which extends to young girls, as well as a comprehensive child care plan to attract women to come back to work, both which are seen as stacked factors that keep women and girls from reaching their full potential. The commitment to support women by building a society of equal opportunities is reflected in ongoing legislative reforms, policies, and plans. On providing the best health services, the Ministry, through the National Population and Family Development Board, or in Malaysia we call it LPPKN, advocates awareness on reproductive health services, including family planning. One such program is the Social Empowerment of Reproductive Health Initiative. We call it SERI, S-E-R-I. This program aims to address the issue of inaccessibility to feminine care through the access to menstrual hygiene supplies, access to facilities for menstrual hygiene, social support in practicing menstrual hygiene, as well as access to reproductive health education. The implementation of the SERI targets Malaysian adolescent girls aged 13 to 17 years from households under P40 category. The Ministry has also launched the newly revised National Reproductive Health and Social Education Policy, or we call it PEKERTI, P-E-K-E-R-T-I, 2022 to 2025, on 8th of September 2022, which highlights the whole of nation approach to tackle issues on reproductive health and social education while creating awareness among the public. The revised PEKERTI takes into account religious diversity, age group, culture, gender, and life values of Malaysians, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 target, namely gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. The strategies aligned are directed on reproductive and social health education that applies to all levels of society. The development and evaluation of this policy will be monitored by the Advisory and Coordinating Committee for Reproductive Health, or ACCRH, headed by the LPPKN. On attracting women stay or return in the workforce, the ministry also needs to relook into the burden of unpaid care work, also brings the opportunity for transforming it into the broader care economy. This has the potential of transition women, particularly from B40 backgrounds, from informal entrepreneurship into the formal labor force as micro, small and medium entrepreneurs, providing quality early child care and daycare for all women or the working mothers, ensuring access to such essential family support services assures mothers they can go to work without worrying about the babies and children's well-being. I'm also proud to note our many strides in increasing legal protection for women, such as the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act 2022, Anti-Stalking Bill, Housewife Social Security Bill, and Employment Act amendments are among the legislative foundations for enhancing our women's full participation and benefits. Among Employment Act 1955 amendments include maternity leave privileges to be extended from 60 to 90 days to all female employees, restriction on termination of pregnant female employee, and paid paternity leave. Moving forward and looking towards the remainder of the year, which will also see the 15th session of Parliament covering on 19th and 20th December, which will be followed a month later by the retabling or tabling of Budget 2023. It is important that women's rights through economic equity can further be achieved through targeted gender-responsive budgeting towards ensuring that no one is left behind, especially women from vulnerable backgrounds during our pandemic economic recovery. Increasing opportunities, particularly for women in informal sectors, while revitalizing female employment in hard-hit industries, can be immediate economic gains. Overall, gender-sensitized national economic recovery efforts via strategic investments, interagency collaboration, and multi-stakeholder partnerships will place Malaysia firmly on the path towards attaining the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 5, while also fulfilling the targets of the 12th Malaysia Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, as Malaysia charts her recovery from the devastating impacts of the pandemic, Malaysian women's untapped talent and economic potential is key to national recovery and propelling the country towards achieving the 2030 SDGs, investing in women's sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights is investment in women's economic independence and Malaysia's guaranteed economic growth and recovery. I would like to again congratulate the United Nations Population Fund Malaysia, and the MWGF Secretariat for your time and effort in developing this solution-centric platform that works in tandem with our policy of elevating the safety and well-being of our women and girls. I wish all the esteemed panelists and speakers here today a fruitful and impactful day of discussions ahead. I would also like to take this opportunity to wish every one of you in Malaysia, regardless of your race and religion, we do celebrate the coming celebration, that is Merry Christmas. So I wish you all Merry Christmas and a very happy New Year. Sekian wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I proudly declare the 3rd Malaysia Women and Girls Forum open. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, Malaysia. You like this way better. And to share an example, you are looking at one of those ladies right now who found it a bit hard to return to the workforce. I am a mother of 2 who just had a 1-year-old son who had so much trouble finding childcare, worrying about the child. So this is one of many subjects that will be covered today. This is actually one of my first jobs as a host back after 3 years. So I've been jobless, I've been knocked up by the husband, and allow a little bit of joke here. Last night at 3 a.m., he was watching France win the game. Last night at 3 a.m., I was patching the baby back to bed, so we both didn't sleep for very different reasons. So today there's vested interest for me as well. All these topics are very close to my heart. Thank you first of all for having me as your MC. My name is Serena C. And to officially welcome you here. Now ladies and gentlemen, this is, wow, an amazing woman. Please give her a big round of applause. Timina Kaushji, MWGF, Head of Secretariat, to elaborate on the overall format, concept, mechanisms of the Malaysia Women and Girls Forum 2022.
A very good morning. Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, Malaysia. Your Excellency, Ms. Karima Al-Khoury, United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam. Yang Berbahagia, Datuk Dr. Maziah Che Yusof, Secretary General, Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development. Dr. Asa Tarkelson, United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA Malaysia Representative. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor to be with you all here today, including my media colleagues. Just for your information and to let us all know, the Malaysia Women and Girls Forum is an annual event. This, of course, is its 3rd iteration, bringing together multiple stakeholders and aiming to be the bridge connecting public, civil society, and policy stakeholders. So we aim to rapidly advance essential social, economic, and political solutions for Malaysia's women and girls. MWGF is also open to the public. Our panelists and speakers come from the civil service, the non-governmental, the academic, legislative, youth, public, as well as our private sectors. Now, each year, ladies and gentlemen, MWGF comes up with resolutions. These resolutions are garnered through most actionable areas from the day's discussions and proceedings, and they are announced at the end of the forum. They will then serve as benchmarks for progressing, in particular, SDG 5, gender equality. We are funded and supported by the United Nations and UNFPA Malaysia. And the MWGF Secretariat identifies, engages, and tracks key social, economic, and legislative changes over the course of the year. We will convene again once more at the end of next year to highlight proactive recommendations and solutions on the progress of advancing gender equality for Malaysia's women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, in the spirit of active public participation, all our keynote sessions and plenary discussions welcome questions and feedback from both our live audience joining us in person and online throughout the day. We will be taking 3 to 5 questions from our audience for each of the sessions. Our hashtags are MWGF, MWGF 2022, and the hashtag Wanita Bangkit Economy. Please follow them, post your thoughts and screenshots with the hashtags, and also by tagging the United Nations in Malaysia as well as UNFPA Malaysia on your social media. With that, thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to MWGF 2022. On that note, I hand back to you, Serena.
Thank you, Tamina. Let's move to the first agenda for MWGF 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for the soft launch of Special Report on Enhancing Human Capital through Sexual and Reproductive Health Investments and Family Support Policies in Malaysia and Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. So let's watch an introductory video about this landmark report for Malaysia's women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, this truly illuminating report identifies pathways through which investments in sexual and reproductive health, SRH, contribute to building human capital in Malaysia while promoting health, social, and economic well-being. We are absolutely delighted to invite David Debeni, health economist at United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, Asia, and the Pacific Regional Office to give us an overview and introduction to the report. David, please.
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to be here today to present this report. And I must say this report is the end of a long journey that we started even before COVID. And as it was said by my colleague also, as it was presented in the video, is focused on explaining, unpacking the linkages between SRHR interventions, family support policies in particular, and human capital development for Malaysia. And this is very important in this time for not only for Malaysia but for this region, given that we are dealing with multiple shocks in addition to the effect of the pandemic, and there's a need of a strong recovery for all. Let me see, and don't know if I'm pressing, yes. So maybe I start with a brief introduction of the scope and the aim of this report. As I said, the main aim of the report was to estimate the contribution of sexual reproductive health and rights interventions and family support policies to the development of human capital for Malaysia. And one of the key aspects that we wanted to focus on was what has been said already by other colleagues before me, is the fact that the low female labor participation in Malaysia is a barrier, is a persistent barrier, is an obstacle to the transition of the capital of the country to high-income country and in general to socioeconomic development. So this study shows that actually investing in these services will allow to increase female labor participations and also spur socioeconomic development. And not only this study demonstrates that investing in reproductive health and reproductive rights and family support policies is a human rights issue, but it also makes economic sense and is a good investment. So we believe we have a strong argument here to make that economic case. So the current status of SRH and family support policies in Malaysia, I won't go through in details all these slides. I believe you know better than me, but if we look at some of the key indicators, for example, we have seen over the past years persistent stagnation in maternal morbidity, so the country is not making much effort, much progresses in reducing the maternal mortality rates. It will be interesting to know what happened and the consequences of the impact of COVID-19. I know we've done some research with other partners, but we expect that access of services, the limitation of services may have had a negative impact on these indicators. Modern contraceptive prevalence has also been stagnating in the country. It's stopped at 34%, which is considerably lower than similar middle-income country and definitely OECD peer. And cervical cancers remain a matter of concern, given that the screening program and the coverage of screening program in Malaysia remain quite low. In relation to the groups and cohort of concern, adolescents remain a group where with the highest level of unintended pregnancies and birth rate. I mean, the birth rate for adolescents in this country is 8.5, which is very high. And in relation to the family support policies, which is one of the main focus of this report, there's been a lot of efforts. There's been, as we said, a lot of commitments as well towards improving this policy framework, but a lot has to be done in relation to the inclusiveness, for example, of fathers in the policies, in paternity leaves, and also at the level of coverage in terms of including the family household with a lower income. So there's a lot of efforts, but definitely it's not enough. So going back maybe to the conceptual framework, because as I said, this is an economic analysis and it aims to really estimate the impacts of all these services on human capital. And we know that human capital development is the main driver for inclusive socioeconomic development and well-being, together, of course, with other pillars like, development of physical capital infrastructure, technology, innovation, and so on. But human capital is recognized as being the most important. And out of the typical 3 pillars of human capital, when you look at health, when you look at education, and development of employment opportunities through training and development of work experience, we are focusing in this report on 2 macro areas, which is the sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights services and family support policies. So the aim of this report is really to explore how those 2 macro areas impact human capital development. And the authors, the School of Public Health at Harvard University, has explored, sorry, keep pressing the wrong one, has explored 5 main channels to look at these pathways. So the first is looking how these interventions, the combination scale up of this intervention will increase female labor participation. Then the second one is how the increase in female educational attainment will affect human capital, and how the lower depreciation of female human capital from increased job experience and productivity will also improve the economic development. Finally, we look at the effect of this intervention of the women and the health of women and their children, and the consequences of this increased productivity in greater accumulation of saving. So this is kind of the specific pathway that the report uses to make these estimates. And the first one, as I said, is how we think that we can manage to increase female level participation through investment in these services. So the first graph on the top, I think, could be familiar, has been said already. The female labor rate participation in Malaysia is below the average for peer countries, the country of the similar income. So it's maybe very small, but the blue bar in the upper graph is Malaysia, which is one of the lowest within other OECD countries. When you will look at the report, hopefully you will be able to read this graph better. And then one of the reasons why labor for participation for female remain very low is the level of housework that women has to suffer every day. And the graph on the last graph on the bottom show that 60% in a recent survey of respondents said that the reason for being out of the labor force is because of excessive housework and including the necessity to take care of children. So we know that we have a low female labor for participation. We also know one of the reasons. So the modelers try to estimate the impact of providing childcare and other family support policies. It could be, for example, providing parental leaves, even for father, coupled with the provision of voluntary-based, human right-based contraceptive services, will allow women to determine the time and the space of when having children, and in turn to decide and have the opportunity to go back to work and continue to be productive. So the economic estimation has been done is based on this assumption and on these models. This is one. The second aspect is referred to education, and this is another aspect that was discussed today. So we know from a World Bank study done in 2014 from Malaysia that the return of schooling in Malaysia, looking at the increase in wages for additional years of school, of education, is much higher for women. So an additional year for schooling in Malaysia increases wages by 12% on average for women, which is quite significant compared to 9% for men. So even though the secondary school completion rates for girls in this country tend to be higher, we also know that we have high level of school dropouts. And we also know the reason why is that. And one of the reasons is due to the high level of unintended pregnancies. And in 2017, for example, the country has registered more than 12,000 live births between adolescent age 10 to 19. And almost half of those pregnancies were unintended. So girls drop out of school because of this reason as well. And it's not only common in this country, unfortunately. So by increasing educational attainment, we expect an increase in future wages, because girls will be able to complete their educations and continue to be employed in the workforce. And comprehensive sexuality education and the provision of voluntary contraceptive method is key in this direction, because it will allow to determine, to continue to their education. So this is the second pathway. So the first one was labor for participation, the second one looking at increasing education attainment. The other aspects for productivity is the author I've looked at is the depreciation of female human capital through job experience and productivity. So typically, the women's productivity, any employee's productivity is determined by education, is determined by health and the on-the-job experience, so the duration you stay in the job. And I wanted to show from the report a couple of graphs. So you see the one on top is the labor force participation rate by age in Malaysia in 2018 versus an example from Japan, but there's similar pathway from other countries as well, other OECD countries. And you see the blue line, again, probably is a bit small. The blue line is represent labor force participation for male, and the orange for female. You see the gap between the two countries is much higher for Malaysia, and that depicts and confirm what we said earlier. But most importantly, you see for Japan, the orange line keeps constant, means that women remain in the job. So they are able to develop the skills to become more productive and increase their earnings and maintain their earnings. In Malaysia, that line, the orange line, drops. So this is another factor that was considered in the model. So we expect that by providing the provision of these services, both family support policies and SRH services, will allow women to make the decision to have access to contraceptive and to time their pregnancies as they want. And hopefully to be able, if they're supported by specific policies, to remain in the job. So to keep that orange line constant like it's happening in other countries as well. Then there is another important framework. I won't go through all the graphs, but in order to estimate the economic impacts and benefits of investing in these services, the authors also look at the impact of scaling up these interventions on long-term development through the pathway of improved morbidity, improve, in essence, the health conditions of the beneficiaries, and which are also the workers of today and of tomorrow for the country. So we've seen, for example, that we know that averting unintended pregnancies will reduce morbidity because will decrease the risk of adverse maternal outcomes, and as well as obviously cervical cancer and the provision of vaccination and screening will also decrease morbidity and mortality, and therefore increasing the human capital for the country. So this is a typical pathway looking at the improvement in the ability of the future workers. And finally, they also estimated the impact on in relation to accumulations of saving. And this is important, I think, in the context of this country, because Malaysia, like many other countries in the region, is experiencing aging partner. The population structure is changing. We expect that in the next decade, approximately 10% of the population is projected to be over 65 years old. So by investing on this intervention, the authors are